Welcome to our Hatchery Live. I'm Jose Leal. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year, Sissy. Matt Perez, my partner, is running late. We're not sure if he's going to be able to join us, but hopefully he will. And I'm Jose Leal, and today's guest is Sissy Wang. Sissy, we typically start with something very personal. If you can tell us a little bit about who you are from Sissy, not the work stuff, but the Sissy, the person, so that we can understand who you are, and then talk a little bit about what got you to be invited today.
Absolutely. Well, nice to see you here again, Jose. I was in one of your talk shows. I was very impressed with the book and the purpose, the radical purpose the organization carries. I would see myself maybe 3 sentences. The first one, I am an explorer in heart. I think life offers us infinite possibilities for us to enjoy fully. The second one is, I would say I'm a warrior in heart. I love to solve injustice, and when I see people's potential being suppressed, and that just really lit me up, and I want to do something about it. The third, I would say I'm a comedian in heart. I love to laugh, and end of the day, right? And then, if you drip away all the labels and fame, and we have external labels, and we just want to have a good laugh and with the people we love and with the community. So I think that probably summarized me in short: an explorer, a warrior, and a comedian.
Awesome. There's Matt. Welcome, Matt. You got in. Thank you.
Finally. Nice to see you, Matt.
Yeah. Happy New Year. So Sissy, you and I talked a little bit before. You're living in Canada now, but you, like myself and Matt, we're all immigrants. And can you tell us a little bit about your background as far as having immigrated from Taiwan, you said?
Yeah, so I grew up in a tiny village, northeast part of China, and moved to Canada 8 years ago. Have lived internationally, so currently resident in Vancouver. So I lived in San Francisco Bay Area for 3 years. Vancouver is the 13th city I lived around the world for the past 60. Yeah, so I had the opportunity, work and life and travel. So very fortunate that way. For the past 16 years, I spent my career kind of in and out corporate. So as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, always leading change and always trying to disrupt. So there's a pattern there. That's why we're having this chat today. So I think for me, one passion I really have is when I see organizations designed in the way to fulfill certain objective without considering holistic well-being of human beings, and that really bothers me. My career has been with very reputable organizations, IBM, Novartis, and Siemens, and I helped scale, some famous Canada brand internationally. From that experience, what I was intrigued is the architect, the governance we create for an organization. And how can we reach to the state that's well balanced, that human potential, organization potential are both fulfilled. It's not one above another. It's a coexistence of abundance.
How old were you when you immigrated to?
I moved here 8 years ago, just in my early 30th.
8 years ago. You speak very good English.
I appreciate that. Yes, I think I probably always passionate about it, and I also worked really hard on it.
I believe it. I tried to learn Chinese for 2 minutes.
Oh, well, good luck. Yes, unless you Chinese language, it's very difficult to learn as adults. Mm-hmm.
Either one, the Mandarin and the
Cantonese.
The Cantonese, they're tonal. I don't hear the difference. So,
I don't understand Cantonese. I can read Cantonese, but speaking wise, it's very different pronunciation system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of sick, so you hear my voice, and I'm okay. I mean, I'm not okay, but I'm okay.
I'm glad.
Sissy, what when you described yourself I heard myself in you.
You did. Wonderful, Jose.
Because I think what you recognize about the fact that I like to call it fairness. You called it, I think, injustice. But there's this sense that we have that something just isn't right, and it's not really a conscious decision. It's a feeling of just, I have to fix it. I have to do something about it. And I think that's part of why Radical even exists, is that we feel this desire to make work better. Both Matt and I have worked in the corporate world. Both of us left that corporate world unhappy with what we were dealing with. And the idea of creating a different way of working really stems from, at least for me, stems from that desire to make things better and be fair towards people. And I think what you've just described is very true of a lot of people who are in this space trying to find ways to make it better for people rather than simply keeping everybody happy in the status quo. And it sounds like that's not what you do. So tell us about some of the work that you've done. You've mentioned some corporations. What type of work did you do there more specifically?
So my role has always been the executive leadership in human resources, and probably the heart of the organization where we lead and culture change and digital transformations and people and talent collaborations. Because sometimes when you're in a different department, you're more like a recipient of the stuff that HR designs, where the program rolls out, but you're the heart of it and you are the driver of it, right? You're the engine of the design. So from that point of view, I think I have the first-hand experience, able to say, right, why some organizations' culture is just so, lack of better English, rotten in a way that is toxic. Why some organizations' culture is very fulfilling and very free, very unleashing. And so there is a secret in there. I often call this art. It's an art and science. I obviously blessed to grow up in China with such a vast Asian history, and I grew up with so much wisdom. And what I see, what I'm very cautious about, I don't want to make corporate as a complete opposition. And I would say from a corporate to a new paradigm, it's not revolution, it's an evolution. So the evolution really is a metamorphosis process, and it is really encompassed with entire how society moving forward. And I really see two paradigm shift. And in fact, you and I will talk about how long took you write a book, ask you, is that ChatGPT time or without ChatGPT, right? So we are living in this exponential change. So the two paradigm, the first one is, I call this global infrastructure upgrade. You talk about exponential technology, right? And so when you are someone who's so creative in the past, you probably couldn't do much because, it take you forever to learn new skills. And now you have all those tools just on your fingertip. And in larger scale, how exponential technology disrupting all industries, and AI and VR and nanotechnology, CRISPR gene editing, longevity, just all the things we used to consider as a status quo has been disrupted. And so that will tremendously shift infrastructure, how humans collaborate and how business runs. And the second paradigm shift is, I call this global consciousness awakening. And put in plain word, in COVID, as you can see, so many people have questioning the meaning of life, the purpose of life, and how many people have left their considered success, right? And bought a piece of land in somewhere in Portugal, just raised chickens and cows. I don't say that's for everybody, but it tells you that we start reconsider the value we hold to be true to ourselves in life. And they put that together and overlay this bullseye is, what is the future for all humanity? And I believe there's two sides responsibilities. And one side of responsibility is we are responsible for ourselves. and to be fully awakened, to return truth to our authentic self. And we're all born with innate talent, but when we're going through the mass education system, NASA did a study and they want to track who's the best astronaut, right? So they work with Cornell University. They did a study for kindergarten kids, and most kids before 5, 95% of them are geniuses. And once reach 15, only 5% of geniuses have left. And so in the system setting, we also allowed ourselves to be socially conditioned, forget the talent we're born with. So how can we recognize that or work through that and to awaken the infinite potential already in us? Then the other side is the responsibility from corporations, organizations, and government. And actually that is a systematic change. You only have one-on-one work, right? In China, you would say one hand couldn't make a sound. It takes two hands. So how can we have individual, we can have a collective organization, we come together and to initiate this radical transformation?
Citizen community is important.
100%.
Okay. Either I'm Chinese or you're Cuban, so one of the that's an interesting point of view. The thing I warn you that to begin to look out for is that the system that we live in now, which we call the fiat system, I told you to do it. The fiat system is very, very good at keeping things within its bounds. I agree with you that it's not an opposition, it's not a revolution. I lived through one revolution once enough. And it just brings a different set of characters, but they want to stay within the system. We're the bosses now, not you, because we're at the guns, not you. And so anyways, it's an evolution. The existing system can keep going, but we're trying to create an alternative. So people don't come to the end of the rope and they go, oh, I got to have lots of managers now. I got to do this. I got to be the center of participation. And that's not, that is back into the fiat system.
Yes.
So.
Definitely. I think in large, if you think how human history have evolved, right? So we have tried all kinds of governing systems, from a tribalism to federalism to capitalism, and different parts of the world have a communism. And so it's not one better than another. It's just a situationalism. It's in that situation, that period of time, what have worked for a particular group of people in large society or organizations. And now the interesting fact, which we did not have this much material abundance in the past, and now we do, so they create different accessibility and also technology creating enablement. And it's a trifactor adding together is accelerate consciousness awakening.
Yes.
And in the accelerated pace, the things happening fast, and this is where we really calling for leaders, right? So this is not like I'm gonna sleep on it for a year, I'm gonna do something. This is now, time is now, change is now.
How do you define leaders?
Say that again, Matt.
How do you define leaders?
Leaders?
Yeah.
I think leader is a light to glow within. So leader is not someone I see has a power. Leader is someone called to service. So for example, leader is someone on the side of the street, they see a garbage bin tilt over, and without anybody watching, they will lift the garbage bin. And someone pick up trash on the street, and someone do things for others, no matter big or small. That is a leader for me.
That's a leader because it calls other people to do the same
Exactly.
thing. Okay.
If we all can do that, if each of us on this planet we can do that, this world will be looking very different.
We agree on a lot of things. And actually, Taiwan is you're from Taiwan, right?
No, China.
Oh, you're from China, the big PRC. You were in the dictatorship. Now you're less drastic dictatorship, but government is dictatorship in a sense. But it allows you to do more in Canada. And in the PRC, you'd be in jail somewhere. And but here you're welcome to experiment, which is a big part of what we do also. We're recording, right?
Yep.
Okay. I thought we were still in the in the background and thinking this would be good for the recording. Anyways,
It's okay. Keep it raw, keep it authentic, right? That's what our audience wanted, and that's what I wanted.
yeah, and I think you're a very good example of having a sort all the bad messages you live through. Same thing we live in Cuba is a bad development of revolution. Revolution just put this guy Xi Jinping in power, and whatever he says goes, and that's not good. The ability is to let the community define what the community wants, what the community needs, because only the community does, and it comes from people. And I want this. Oh, that's very similar to that, and it all builds up. So, but we'll learn from each other, and that's the thing that you just expressed. I'm really glad to see somebody your age realizing that. So,
I think, allow me to comment is, I know what I know. I know what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So for anything that is at such a high political realm, it's not something I have enough knowledge to comment. And I feel very blessed grow up in China with the deep culture and also the prosperity Chinese government have brought to society, uplifting about 60 to 80 million people out of poverty every year. And I think that's something so extraordinary in terms of leadership styles. And I really can't comment as much because I have left China about 10 years in total now. And because I've lived in San Francisco for 3 years. But what I would say is the governance or borders is a social construct, is a narrative I have created long time, for a very long time. And humans, the way how we bond, how we collaborative is through collective shared narratives. So the interesting, you can create one narrative, you can also create another narrative. So in a sense, challenge what's the perception of reality, and that in the sense you're empowered, right? So now we're creating a radical organization itself is a narrative, and then that narrative that we're purpose or calling is to making sure human potential is fully unleashed. But something interesting in that narrative is we are innately biologically designed to explore, and without that innate biological design, we would not be where we're today. We're probably still a tribe caught in Africa somewhere in savannah hunting zebras. And now in today with so much abundance, I think that is calling to something in nature, and we are so disconnected with nature, human beings, but individual and organizations so as well. And now you can see organizations starting to looking, in tangible terms and sustainability practices, right? And B Corps, and we're starting raising the nature into an equivalent state to say, okay, we're better to coexist with nature, not just to take it what nature offers and never replenish it.
So I'll move away from the dictatorship language, and I'll move to your language, because you're saying very succinctly, you're expressing what we're trying to get across.
Exactly.
Which is that human nature is the driver of it all. We want to try different things. We want to experiment, and what we have, democracy or whatever we have here, is pushing you to know productivity and make money for me and do this and do that. It's all coming from the top, and it should come from the community. So very wise, very wise.
I would add it comes from inside, right? To your point.
Yes.
And
exactly.
and inside is, and all of us is the same thing.
It is the same thing.
We're all life. We're not separate from nature. We are nature. And because we are nature, because we can recognize that today in a way that I think we couldn't recognize as clearly in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Though some traditions did. It's not to say that none did, but globally, that part of us has not been really well understood. And I think today, our understanding of that and the fact that, as you pointed out, AI and the abundance of both energy and food and everything else is changing our ability to see what we can see when we have the time to do that.
That's right.
And when our grandparents had to work, there was no choice. There was no other way of doing it. Their work had to be whatever somebody else said their work was. And that's the way it was. And if I live in a small village and there's a guy who's giving me a job, I'm grateful. And now we see, wait a minute, I could do something myself. I could do something different. I could do something that's better than what we have. And I think what's emerging, as you very, very well said, what is evolving is a new way of us being alive. Not just a new way of us working, but a new way of us being alive, which recognizes that those things you said early on about being an explorer, about being, wanting things to be fair and just, and about having fun.
That's right. You gotta have fun.
Then those things are innate to us. And we can only do those things in an environment that we participate in, that we feel comfortable in, that we feel safe in. And when we live in an environment that doesn't have all that, then we're stuck back in that space. So giving ourselves the freedom to express those parts of ourselves in a work environment, which is where we spend most of our time, right? It's with our colleagues. And in modern corporations, not to say, they're evil and we're not, because we've created them. So they didn't come out of nowhere. We created the corporation. We created all of the systems that we currently live in. So my question to you is, how do we disrupt this hierarchy? Because that's the topic for today. What is it that you think is the way to disrupt this hierarchy that we've just described as something that constrains us in our lives?
There are a few angles we can go about this. Something more obvious, when you're looking at a hierarchy, how the decision being made, is decision made on the top of the pyramids, right? And trickle down and throughout the pyramids, and their operations to get things done, fulfilling the corporate objective. And one simple way to disrupt it, I call this co-creation, which is collective intelligence, when in fact is happening already. A lot of big HR software vendors like Workday, SAP, and starting to develop that internal talent marketplace and allow people to upload their skills, their desires, their ideas, and organizations start to harvest those intelligence already existing within their walls. Because in the past, and this is all exported or exited from the organization, because it's rather linear model, and now become much more fluid and a much more collaborative. So that is already existing in different places. And the second part I see is, just like you said, that when humans alive and there's a purpose within it, right? We wanted to activate the aliveness for an organization. And so an organization have a purpose, have a calling, and that make things very different. I believe all human beings have a heroic cause in all of us, as is a seed waiting to be awakened. And so when organization have a massive transformative purpose, it innately aligned with a heroic seed that inside of us. So that is energetic alignment, and then empowered with technology and governance And that's where we can disrupt organization as well. The third, I would say, is really within the cultural element within organization. So, and this part, it's more subtle but have a bigger impact. And when I see, for example, now we talk about in corporate world, like diversity, equity, inclusion, it sounds very fancy, right? And then you ask people, break that down for me, and you have millions of explanations. But I did. Someone explains beautifully. I read this quote to say, diversity is whether you'll be invited to a party. Inclusion is whether you'll be invited to a dance. And so how can we not making DI this fancy term, and we invite DI consultant and come into our organization to do some initiative. It probably lasts for 6 months and forget all about it, and actually examine the cultural roots that diversity from race, gender, nationality, just the iceberg, on tip of the iceberg, and beneath it, it's the individuality we all hold within ourselves, the unique identity, unique dream and desires we'll hold. And how can we creating a collaborative space using technology to harvest all of that? And the fourth, I would say, dimension is how can we break the walls, traditional walls of organizations. Organizations, oftentimes corporations that compete with each other, right? Because obviously we'll have bottom lines have to meet. During COVID, something happened. It's a re-examining how our organization still fulfilling its corporate objective, at the same time breaking the walls. Operating is in China, and a few retail chains have to close their operations because nobody's visiting stores, and they're starting to collaborating with other companies who are rising talent because the industry just didn't get impacted, and rather they peaked, so they transport all their talent into a few other companies, and nobody get lost and everybody get taken care of. So there is a mass scale fluidity that we haven't even considered, because there's just always been competition. So in larger scale, how can we bring co-creation? And the fifth element, I would say, is how can we bring spirituality into the corporate world? Because in corporate world, we often think that's something so uhu, something so guru, something, oh my God, you're gonna meditate on top of Himalayas. Just way not my feeding kids and buying groceries and feeding car gas. And in fact, in spirituality empowers you to have alignment to aliveness. And that is meditating, and that is journaling, right? And something so easy, simple, and how we transform leadership's mentality through spirituality, setting the foundation for organization, and that will create profound change. So I would say those 5 simple aspects is easy to implement and will make a big difference.
And the last one,
simple tag too.
Yeah, well, nothing's easy. Nothing's easy. But what you've just described, especially the fifth item there about spirituality, which there's many ways to describe spirituality. I like to think of spirituality as my ability to recognize myself, to be myself, to be in touch with myself, therefore in touch with life, because that's what I am. And so I think part of what we've been trying to do is, as you said it earlier, it's all about the narrative. It's all about the story.
That's right.
And those 5 things, if we can bring them together with the understanding that there is a new lens with which we can look at ourselves.
That's
and
right.
that new lens brings to us a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing what an organization can be and how we need to be treated within that type of environment. That foundational, and that's the reason we called it radical. It goes to the root of who we are, but it's also a fundamental change. That foundational view of ourselves and us in communion, right, as a community, changes how we see the role of an organization. And everything that you've described can fall from that narrative.
Yeah.
Now we're no longer making decisions at the top, because we know that the second one person is making decisions, a whole bunch of other people are going to be unhappy. Right?
Because we all have rebel in us. Yes.
Right. And so how do we participate in decision making? How do we participate in deciding what happens because we're the ones that are going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that part of this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I think your point about evolution and narrative
Mm-hmm.
and the 5 points you've just mentioned
Mm-hmm.
as part of the narrative
Mm-hmm.
is really what we're in the business of doing, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
is trying to figure out what is that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have you participate in this because it sounds like you really not only understand what is happening, but
Mhm.
understand what needs to happen. And certainly that's part of the conversation that we've been having here at Radical. And one of the things we're doing here on the private chat is talking about Radical World, which is the idea that we're going to be trying to improve our message, if you will, our narrative, to
Yeah.
speak more clearly about what we want to see.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and that radical really is about attaining a radical world and living in the world where we all live our own desires, live our
Mhm.
own, as you said, spiritual selves.
Yeah. Higher
um,
self.
higher
Align with the
selves.
higher self. Yeah.
I like to call it a radical purpose
Yeah.
that we all have, right, as individuals.
Yeah.
So does that contradict anything that you've just said, or does that feel?
No, I think you actually summarized very nicely, Jose. I would, if I can add anything, I would say add to the narrative is how can we creating context around what we're doing. So individual level, everybody wanted to be empowered, correct? Want to feel they are in their power, but in fact, we're running script in our head, thinking we're disempowered. So we often become a victim of our environment rather creator of our environment. Make sense?
Mhm.
And for corporations, the same, right? Corporation is the same narrative. They say, oh, economy is bad. We have layoff people, right? Competition is fierce. So we have profit driven. That is narrative. The corporation is a victim of the society economy. And rather say we are the creator of economy or creator of a narrative. And so that is a disempowering position versus empowering position. I think radical or what up to in overall is how can we empowering people to be self-empowered, because when you're self-empowered it's this widespreading snowball effect, and then one thing lights another and become a movement, and that's what I truly want to see, and the people empower themselves, change the narrative in their head, then everything flows.
The way I would say it is that fish are embedded in water. So trying to talk to fish about water, they go, what water? They just don't say it, right? And we're embedded in our stories. You're very correct about that. And so when we try to talk to them about narratives and stories and stuff like that, they go, leave, right? Because they're embedded. You're talking about something that's natural. And there's nothing natural about it. It's just made up over thousands of years. And so that's why I asked, I'm going to ask it again. How do you define a leader? And if it's something with a title, I don't call that a leader. I call that a boss. If it's someone that is picking garbage from the street or doing something that somebody else can imitate without any permission, without anything, that's the leader. So which one of those two is your definition of leadership? Title or behavior?
I think for me is I have mentioned earlier calls, right? So I think a leader is something internal. It is a drive you wanted to make a difference for others. It's a drive you want to make a difference for others without asking for return.
So the impact that it has in the community is I do it, somebody follows me, somebody follows them, and like that.
It's a contribution without attachment.
Exactly. And we get a community. So no titles are involved. Good. You pass.
I answered the question earlier already.
Yeah.
I know you did, but I want to ask you again
Okay.
in this context, because it seemed to me that Jose is more polished and stuff like that. I'm not polished. Um, you kept saying the corporation, the corporation, the corporation. And I started leaning back thinking, titles, hierarchies, and that's not but that's not what you just expressed. So that's
No,
good.
I think the context I'm providing is it's not an opposition, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. So when you consider evolution, evolution is standing on something. So evolution is based on the wisdom Earth has already created, right? And carry on that wisdom and further evolve, right? So it's not
Yes.
disrupt, it's evolving on top of it. So in Chinese, we see standing on the shoulder of giants, and there's an old saying. And I think cooperation has served its purpose and to provide material abundance, and now we're evolving into a new paradigm. And we want them to come along, and we want to empower them to come along, because the majority of the world is still employed by corporations. And so how can we initiate a radical change that is less disruptive, right?
Yes.
And that is actually considerate holistic well-being, because oftentimes revolution is costly. And when we think of radical, we don't think about the consequences of radical, because in the universe of karma, everything has its counter effect, right? So the law of universe. So how can we initiate change and thinking, what is the best way to initiate change that all stakeholders are involved and willingly and co-create as a community? And in fact, this is happening all over the world already. And I think this torch of light is so bright, and now we can see the possibility. And like you too, right? Spending years of your background and your experience and building this business, writing the book, and spreading the words, and that's just beautiful.
Yeah. And but what do you say that the people are getting, and that's the same feeling I get, okay? I'm not challenging you in that way. But what do you see? What is the leadership that people are taking that we have to imitate? I still don't see that. I see a few of us speaking of the wilderness with our, clothes torn and all that stuff. And on top of the mountain, which is the wrong way to be, the wrong place to be. And we're still, people will say, yeah, that sounds very good. That sounds very, how do I make money? At the end, it's always, how do I make money? And in more Jose-like ways and in gentle ways. So, but what are you seeing? What do you see as leadership?
I think leadership it's a vast topic. I'm trying to think what exactly you are asking here.
What I'm asking exactly is who do we follow? Is there anybody?
Who do we follow?
Who is there anybody out there you say follow her? And I'm saying her because I'm thinking that you were from Taiwan. That
not Taiwan, China.
No, I know you are from China, but I'm saying originally thinking that you were from there. There was a lady there that during the pandemic was the leader. You want to imitate her, and then she disappeared. I don't know what happened. And there were people in Google that were inspiring, and you want to follow, and they disappeared. So I label that as fiat protecting itself by taking the people that are too outside our primary goal. And but who do you see that is a leader that you can follow? That
I was in Nelson Mandela. For me, is a leader I truly respect. Gandhi is a leader I truly respect.
Yeah, but he's that.
Those are great human beings that contribution without attachment. A level of forgiveness they have, I think, is beyond ordinary human could resist, and that for me is essential. And that for me is really connected to a divine source. I think when we're looking at leaders, current leadership sometimes can be egocentric driven as well, because when we see in service, we're still expecting some sort of title or outcome of money attached to it. And Gandhi and Nelson Mandela is some I respect, is they just that is behind. That's not nothing. That doesn't motivate them, and then
Okay.
their pure purpose is to embrace the masses, right, at scale. And I think a really
Scale.
great leader for me is, if you really have to think about, and the impact of the leaders, and how can you consider humanity as a whole, is totality part of it. But leadership it's existing in all of us. But when you're taking on totality, when you're taking on scale, it requires very different competency and different lens and different skill set.
So you still with I'm reaching too far by looking for a unitary leader, and instead we're going to find many areas where there be leadership in different areas, and that's really radical. So be careful, and because decentralization is a big basis of what we do, and more from a community perspective, and this thing of looking for the Arnold Schwarzenegger of heavy lifters is the past. And I'm familiar with the past. I'm 72 years old, and we need to look for leaders in different areas. You're right, and then unite them in some way to reassure them that they're talking about the same thing. Because what happens now is you have leaders in climate change, there's a lot of them, and they think they have their cause, and they have their cause. Everybody has their cause, but it's all rooted in the same idea, exploitation, stuff like that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think sorry, I was jumping into there. I think the point we're trying to come across is when we talk about following leaders, like who to follow.
Yeah.
In the sense that we outsource our power, right? And who can light the way, who can point the direction, and
that's not how I was referring to leaders. I was referring to the guys who picks up the garbage, makes it okay for the next guy to come picks up a different piece of garbage. I'm talking about those leaders.
That's right.
So
the day-to-day heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if the same guy goes and punches that picked up the garbage, goes and punches somebody out of the blue, it's not a leadership, but he picked up our garbage.
Right. That's right. There is a concept I would love to maybe talk another time, and I find that's a fundamental quality to be a leader. It's a way of being from I Ching, from Buddhism in Chinese philosophy, called 君子. It's called a noble man, and it's not particular to men or women, but it's.
Can you type that in the?
Oh, yes. I don't think I can type Chinese here, but I will type the spelling here.
君子.
Yeah. So I have 5 principles to guiding individuals the way of being, and respect, kindness. A lot of those way of being a principle, it's very intertwined with different religions. You hear pretty much about the same thing. It's this common foundation, and to be a good human being. And I think that is the foundation of being a leader, and have a higher moral standard, holding yourself and to that high moral standard. And if all leaders, right, in different capacity can have that foundation,
right,
I think that will make huge difference for, in this context, organizations, right? And so it's not ego driven by ego and fear. Scarcity is driven by service, abundance, and that's different mentality. And then when your way of being is shifting, the energy you emit is shifting. So, and then that is culture, because culture is like air you breathe, right? And you walk into the space, and your body have intelligence, able to tell, and is this leader ego driven, or is leader actually is interested in you, genuinely interested in you. And that is the subtle difference we all can tell. But our mind some tricks us like, oh, that's just the way it is. I should not be a rebel. I should not challenge this. And then you sit in that environment for 3 years until you see this flower start to wither away, and that maybe this is not the right environment.
And you start to think that the right environment is one that's going to pay me more, because we don't associate that discomfort with the story, with the force that's in the environment. We associate it with that bad boss who's not paying me enough,
100%.
that bad company who's not giving me enough.
Yes.
Because that's the language we've been taught, rather than saying what's making me unhappy isn't the fact that I'm not getting paid enough.
Mm-hmm.
What's making me unhappy is that I don't have the ability to express myself sufficiently, fully.
What's making me happy is that I don't collect any of the wealth that I created, except a little bit. So I create a lot of wealth and I get this much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the profit, right? Your organization called profit in HR terms and compensation benefits or total rewards. It's still existing in the old paradigm. And so now with Web3, a DAO organization, decentralization, we're starting to reinventing and how people get rewarded. Because normally when you have performance reviews and salary increase is a once a year event, isn't that funny,
and
right?
not
Now
only
you think, oh
that,
my
it's
God, that's
somebody
so
else's
absurd.
decision.
Yeah, exactly. It's so absurd, right? I work hard for a whole year and I get increased by end of the year. And now how can we make that instant? How can we gamify performance, right? And just like you said, play, because they have to fulfill. Everybody want to explore, experiment. Everybody have a cause, is a warrior. Everybody want to have fun. So simple principle, how can we embedding that in the design of exponential conscious organization? And then fulfill the fundamental needs of being a human being. And beyond that, as more noble causes, more scale, different skill competencies that can be trained. And we all have an inner child in all of us. But once we enter corporations, most of us forget about how to play.
Well, we forget how to play, most of us, when we enter school. Never mind corporation.
Enter school and then the corporations, and be a loyal citizen of society, be a moral husband in the family, and so many responsibilities wrapped us around, and we're so suppressed.
Yeah.
And then that inner child is crying, and that causes so much mental distress and so much anxiety for human beings. And you put this type of human being even in a thriving system, the habitual pattern, biological imprint is still there, because they still carry the trauma and from where it used to be and they used to behave. And so that's what I say, the individual work as a human being to be fully unleashed, alive, and connect with spiritual self is just as equivalent as important on the collective base. And
it's the most important.
It is the most important, absolutely.
Because it all starts with me.
Yes.
In order for me to be a part of the community, I need to express myself
100%.
legitimately.
100%.
And if I'm not doing that, then the community doesn't know how to interact with me, because I'm being something other than what I really am.
Yes, 100%. I really love this analogy, the beehive, right? So you look at the design of nature, the beehive is this like equivalent structure. And they have a study, I'm not sure you two have heard, honey as a product have a higher healing effect, because all the bees, with their wings, they vibrate in the same frequency, is creating a resonance, and that resonance and seems into when they're producing honey. And that's the type of resonance I really want to see for organization. And when we are connected, alive, and a purpose in true alignment with organization purpose, that is superpower. That is a world-changing superpower there.
And I think that's community.
It is 100%. Mm-hmm.
That bee honey, I drink a lot of bee honey for different reasons, but it is for people. It is community, because it goes both ways. Individuals will transform, but the community has to transform as well. And the community has to validate, not empower, but validate that behavior. And you should have the ability, as each of us should have the ability, to find another community. If this community wants to pick only pink garbage, and this one wants to pick any garbage, then I'll go with that one. But if I'm forced to work with this guy, I'll be unhappy. Even though I like to pick up birds, I'll be unhappy. So they both have to do this and come up.
It's like a bucket principle. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a question when I was Salam Ismail, he wrote the book Exponential Organization, right? So I'm a part of the OpenExo community. We'll talk about what's the future of organization look like. I think we both agree, including the peeps in the room, that it's really not exponential organization, it's exponential community.
Yes.
That you have few more people like a core, right, of the team, and it's kind of like a web spreading out, and it becomes a swarm. It becomes a swarm way of getting shit done. So now you don't have a corporation, pyramids, long tenure, 25 years, and I think the future is much more fluid. And then people will come together for a cause, right? Quickly come together for a cause, like skunk work or like a task squad, want to task completed and then disperse and then they self-assemble themselves into different tasks. And I think that's really how nature works. Because it's free will, right? Universe grant free will. I free will choose and when, where, who, and I work with.
So I don't know if I'm stepping on your toes now, because the first thing that we did in what were they called? They were called crash teams or something teams. It was when we had a crisis. And how do you fix this crisis? I need that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. And we all come together. The one thing that we kept out of the group was HR. HR wanted to come with no. Magneto, this was some microsystem many years ago. Magneto wanted to skip that. I don't care. Leave. And we did that once and we never repeat it again. And it's when people have the choice to belong to a community and leave people out that don't belong. That's where the foreign object coming to the community is like, have the ability to throw out well, do you want me to talk about China? But anyways, that ability to eject the foreign object in some way or form without killing them, without sending them to jail, without any of those things, but to say we're not part of you. You're not part of us. We're not part of you. And it sounds like you read the book.
Which book?
She hasn't read the book.
Radical Companies.
We have 3 books out. The first one is Radical Companies.
No, I have not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not yet.
I suggest section 2 of the book. Section 1 is about building our credibility and all this shit we know before. You got that licked. You don't need that. And but section 2 is when we come to what is the alternative. And we keep calling the alternatives because it's not a revolution. It doesn't supplant the current system. It's parallel, and it's going to start down here where you don't see the hand, and eventually you see the fingers, and but this culture, which we call fiat, I don't believe that it has a lot of room to grow. It's going to grow and all that stuff, but I don't think you have much room to grow. There are two or three countries in the world that are sticking to we force these people and we send them to working camps if they don't. And China is no longer among the group. There's North Korea, Cuba, maybe Nicaragua, but they're shrinking and everybody is expanding at different rates. So the problem is they have the guns. and we'll see. But anyways,
so it's been 54 minutes almost now.
Yeah,
which is incredible because it's been so quick. Really have enjoyed this conversation, Sissy. Thank you for the work you're doing, because it sounds very much like what we have been doing as well. And I love your energy, love your succinctness and your clarity in what you describe. And that's very helpful, I think, for us as it is for for everyone who's trying to see how they play their role in being a leader in this space, using our collective definition of leader. And thank you also for the time, because typically this is a half-hour conversation, and we've made it almost an hour. So thank you so much. As I warned you, if it was really good, we'd enjoy it and we'd keep going. So we did.
That was what I have hoped for. Good.
It'd be really interesting to have her back after she read one of the books.
Yeah, and this is a good time to announce. Do you want to make the announcement? Should I?
Jose is going to make the announcement.
Okay. So this is a new year. We had not made the announcement before the year changed, but as of next week, we will be changing the name of the podcast to Radical World. Our Hatchery Live will be subsumed into the new Radical World, which is a new website. It's a rebranding that brings together a bunch of work that we and the broader community have been doing, including things like Our Hatchery Live, Radical Companies, the book, Radical Purpose, the Radical Purpose work, and Society 2045. All of that work is being brought together under Radical World, and the podcast and soon to be announced other events and courses and so forth will be part of this new bringing together of Radical into a Radical World. And so looking forward to a different conversation, but a continuing of this conversation, an evolution of this conversation. And I think Matt is right. It would be really interesting to bring you back, Sissy, at some point to talk more about it in some thinking about the Radical World. And as you said, I'm going to sort of misquote you a little bit, that what we want to do is give permission for people not to empower them, but for them to be empowered by having permission to be empowered. And that's really what Radical World would like to do. And that's our mission moving forward, and would love to have you part of that mission and part of that conversation. Thank you again for a wonderful conversation, and look forward to seeing you more in 2024.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this show. I enjoyed our conversation as well. Learned, from both of you, from the years of work and creating this movement. I find this very inspiring, and I haven't really talked a lot about, the startup I was trying to do. That is truly radical, but we'll leave that to.
We'll leave that for next time.
Let's bring it back next week. Talk about the startup.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Matt.